Earth is home to many creatures. Some may even consider a few of them monsters. But what of those more elusive and hidden creatures? The ones we just can't seem to find. Welcome to Monday Morning Monsters. Cryptozoologist and paranormal researcher Barnaby Jones talks about the unknown, mythical, undiscovered, and unidentified creatures from around the world, and the people who have seen them, look for them, and research them. Hear from witnesses about their encounters, as well as renowned names in the field about their work and research. Barnaby is the founder and lead investigator for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society based in Wisconsin. CAPS travels across Wisconsin and beyond looking for connections between different phenomena and how they can all be connected. Now, your host of Monday Morning Monsters, Barnaby Jones.
Good morning, monsters. How's everybody out there doing today? I was so busy starting up here, I forgot to get my other thing going here. It has been a exciting week and weekend for us here at CAPS. We went out to the inaugural Frogman Festival. As you guys probably know, we were out there this weekend, and we had a lot of exciting things. We actually stopped at a gas station and got to witness a car chase go by. A white SUV came whipping through this intersection, almost took out another car, hit another car, and then it was followed by 4 other police cars just whipping right along. And that was our exciting. And then last night, we were supposed to be home last night here, and we ended up having to stop 1 hour away from home, and it was snowing so hard you could not see more than like 10 feet in front of the car. So we made it home safe, and we're all back from Ohio. Awesome. So, yeah. So, guys, we got our normal stuff here right in the beginning. I want to remind everyone we have the first season of On the Trail of Undiscovered Beasts is streaming now on Paraflix. It is all about, the first season is Bigfoot in Wisconsin, all kinds of sightings, reports, and stuff. Thanks, Lee. And we have, you can show your support for all of our stuff, all of our shows and documentaries and stuff that we do. You can wear our merchandise. Go over to our store on wisconsincaps.com. Click on Shop Our Store. There you can find t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, magnets, stickers, and anything else that you want to slap our logo on. You can probably find it on their website. Otherwise, you can go directly to tpublic.com/user/Wisconsin Caps. While you're online, make sure you check out all of our social media. You can find us at Wisconsin Caps at Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and WI Caps on Instagram. You can find also social media pages for our other podcast, Whispers from the Dark, and this one, Monday Morning Monsters. The Ghost Lab project is coming this spring. We are still working on that. I will let you know more about that when we get that running. Our next event is coming up the 24th through the 26th in Pickens, South Carolina. We got a great lineup of people that are going to be at this event. I will be giving a presentation as well, and that will be the haunting at the Hagood Mill Paracon in Pickens, South Carolina. And then we head to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference May 6th in Salt Fork, Ohio. And back to Wisconsin for the Hodag Heritage Festival May 20th in Wisconsin, Rhinelander. And we go back to Ohio for the Monster Fest, put on by Small Town Monsters, June 3rd in Canton, Ohio. And then we have the Marinette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Convention, June 9th and 10th in Marinette, Wisconsin, sponsored by CAPS, Paraflix, American Ghost Walks, and Ravenwood Gardens. Yep, okay. And then MI Paracon in Sault Ste. Marie is coming up in August. We go back to South Carolina in September. And the Great Lakes Paranormal Convention is going to be in Glenbeulah in September. And we also just got all signed up to be back at CryptidCon this year. So we will be at all those events. You can come on out and say hi. Awesome. Was looking at the stuff on the store, plan on getting some after I get paid. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Not only does it support our research and our work, but it also shows everyone else our logo and gets our name out there even more. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I think that's good for comments over there. Welcome everybody to the show. Thanks for watching. Our guest today is Shane Corson from the Olympic Project. Welcome to the show, Shane.
Hey, Barnaby. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love your background there.
Oh, yeah.
all the stuff. So first off, let's start out with a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do and how you got into this.
Yeah, my name's Shane Corson. I am obviously an Olympic Project member. I was a little bit about my background. I was born in Scotland, moved to the United States, Southern California in '93. Was definitely interested in cryptids in general at a young age. 97, I got some, my own wheels and started getting really more involved into the Sasquatch phenomena, especially up and down Southern California, all the way up to Yosemite. I spent a lot of years researching Yosemite in California, and then eventually moved up to Oregon and continued my research up there as a solo investigator in Oregon. Eventually, I got involved with Derek Randall's of the Olympic Project and moved up to Washington to further my research with the Olympic Project in Washington State, specifically the Olympic Peninsula, which is an absolute hotbed for reports and sightings and experiences. And so I've been co-running the Olympic Project for a number of years now, got involved with the Olympic Project in 2012, and here we are today.
Absolutely. That's so cool. What got you interested in the whole topic to begin with?
So when I was living in Scotland, I lived on a little island called Isla. It's off the west coast of Scotland. And I was, living in Scotland, we have the Loch Ness Monster. We have the Grey Man as a folklore. And my mom really got me interested in cryptids in general, specifically paleontology. I love dinosaurs. So I used to write paleontologists, before the internet. I'd write letters to Glasgow or Edinburgh to paleontologists, and they'd write back to me. And so I got really involved with dinosaurs and paleontology. And my mom used to get me books on cryptids, Mokulemembe out of Africa, Yeti, the Mapinguari, all these different cryptids. But Sasquatch always intrigued me in North America. And when we moved to the States, I was, I'm living in California, and we're same state as the, Bob Giblin and Roger Patterson film Patty. And so I thought, wow, I can, now that I'm on stateside and can travel, that's really what got me heavily involved in it was my mom. But, just being here in the States, how could you not, if you're into this sort of thing, how could you not get involved?
Oh, that's cool. Did you do any work with the Loch Ness Monster and stuff over there when you were there?
I didn't. I did travel. I've been around that area. I did travel to, it's about a 2-hour ferry ride to the mainland of Scotland. So I didn't do a whole lot of research on it as far as physically going there and doing anything. But I did read a lot of books, watch every documentary. Same thing with Sasquatch from afar. But I didn't really get involved in it. It was more of an interest. I was following others that were doing actual research on Loch Ness.
Very cool. Before we move on, I got to ask, what is your opinion on it? Do you think that it's a prehistoric reptile? Do you think it's an eel or something else?
My personal opinion, it's not an eel. That's just my personal opinion. That loch is very, very deep. They're still learning stuff about it. People argue there's no way. I got a running idea, and it's not my idea. I'm sure others have the same idea, but I believe that Nessie is spotted in there periodically because it's actually an ocean-dwelling cryptid and manages to make it into the loch, maybe to spawn, to give birth. It's kind of like a salmon. Salmon goes out to the ocean for a couple of years and comes back up and spawns. And that's why they're not always seen in that lake all the time. It's just periodically, maybe seasonally, And that's just my idea. Maybe there's underwater caverns. There is other ways to get in there. Seals get in there. So my opinion, I don't know if it's I love the romantic idea of it being like a plesiosaur. There are some photos that kind of point to that direction. I can't rule out a giant eel. There's giant eels in that loch, no doubt about it, with the recent eDNA they did on it. But I wasn't surprised when they did that eDNA that they didn't find anything anomalous. You're talking about a small sample with that deep lake and such a, gigantic lake. So could it be, a plesiosaur or, some sort of water reptile? Absolutely, in my opinion. But it could also be just it could possibly be a really large eel, but there is something seen in that lake that is unexplained.
Definitely. I like how people that say, why doesn't it surface more in that? And if you look at other like whales, dolphins, other even turtles and stuff, all they do is they put their little nose above the water and breathe. They don't have to stick their head out. And, I always thought that was interesting too.
Yeah. Maybe before, now you got a lot of touristy stuff going on. You got a lot of boats on that lake now and people traversing it, fishing it, and that. It doesn't surprise me it wouldn't surface as much as perhaps in the past when you didn't have so many people around the lake and on the lake. It's probably gone a lot more shy over the years, like a lot of animals do. And like you said, I completely agree. They don't need to surface, 10, 15 feet out of the water. A simple little, dolphins do it, whales do it. A lot of known animals do that without completely, unsubmerging themselves.
Absolutely. Awesome. Very cool. So let's jump back onto the Olympic Project stuff. So can you tell everybody that's not familiar with it, what is the Olympic Project? Where is it? And like a little bit of the background of it.
Yeah. So the Olympic Project is based out of Washington State. We mainly conduct our business out of the Olympic Peninsula up here in Washington, though we do have a couple other areas in southwestern Washington. And we try to stick into specific areas without ambulance chasing. We're not really into going after lots of different reports. We got a couple of key areas, and that's what we focus on. The Olympic Project was formed in 2009 by Derek Randalls and Richard Jameau. And Richard Jameau is no longer a Olympic Project member, but the original idea at that time between those two was a camera trap system where they would place lots and lots of cameras along the Olympic mountains trying to get a video or photo of a Sasquatch. And eventually, as time progressed, although we still use cameras, we're more about collecting data. That is our thing nowadays. The vast majority of the Olympic Project has either had an experience, an encounter, or has looked at the evidence and feels like there's something to this. And so we're about collecting as much data as we can, that if one day Sasquatch is proven to exist, which I believe it will be, that we'll have this data, all this information available. And by working in specific areas, we're able to catalog all the known animals all throughout the year, and also the unknown stuff that really sticks out. And we have quite a few members in the Olympic Project, all pretty much science-based, science-minded. We do have some wildlife biologists, some anthropologists, and we have a lot of laymen, hikers, hunters, guides, both male and female. And we have a kind of a core group that does the vast majority of our work, collecting and documenting both audio and physical evidence. And we do a lot of camping trips into some remote areas. And so that's the basis of the Olympic Project, is that we are a data-driven, data-organized organization.
Very cool. Yeah, you hear a lot of these people like talk nowadays about like wanting a body or the bones and all this stuff, and they want this one hard piece of evidence. But really, it's more of a collection of, in order to prove it, you can do the same amount of work when you have audio, video, sightings, pictures, and you have all this little bits of evidence all from one location, and that's just as important as one big piece of evidence.
Absolutely, 100% agree. As my good friend Cliff Berrickman says, it's like a puzzle. You're putting all those puzzle pieces together to paint a giant picture. You can't, one puzzle piece won't complete that puzzle. You need all the different pieces. And so if you can collect all those pieces, slowly you begin to see and paint a picture and put that puzzle together. So you cannot just go with one thing. That's why I love the Olympic project, because we all have our own unique gifts. We all bring something to the table. We're all kind of our own little puzzle pieces ourselves, but you put us together and we can formulate, we can hypothesize, we can be skeptical on stuff, but we're all driven towards the same goal.
Absolutely. That's kind of the same way CAPS works too. Each one of us focuses on a different area.
Mm-hmm.
We have mediums, we have psychics, we have, I do a lot of the cryptid stuff and so on and so forth. But when we all go out to one location, we don't have to be good at everything because somebody's doing that. So what do you specifically do with the Olympic project?
I am kind of across the board. I do a little bit of audio work. Visually looking at audio, collecting audio. That's mainly David Ellis and Chris Spencer's approach to the Olympic project. I'm more of a guy that gets out there in the remote areas, looking for physical evidence, trying to find that physical evidence, trying to have that encounter out in the remote areas. And my main goal the last couple of years, specifically this year, is I want to get, I've been fairly, I think, lucky over the years getting one or two things on thermal camera. And so between we still use game cameras, and that's my thing too as well, but we're kind of going towards a different type of smaller, minute camera that we can place out that is more of a picture taker than a video. And I'm very into therming at nighttime. I love spending a night in a tree stand. The Olympics, there's a lot of huckleberry and bushes and stuff, and you have to get above that to look in those areas. You can't see through it. So I love therming, exploring, hiking, camping, and I'm more of the guy that gets out there, makes the plans, and we go, I'm kind of the coordinator. That's kind of my deal.
Very cool. Yeah. You can't find Sasquatch sitting on your couch.
No. I mean, you can try Google Earth and all that, but it's, no, you gotta, the more time you spend in the woods, and I'm out in the woods 3-4 times a week, if not longer, conducting experiments, exploring, checking my cameras, replacing audio units, and just making a presence out there, and just basically observing. That is the fundamental thing with science. Science was based on observing, and that's what I like to do in these areas. So I get to know the seasons, the patterns of the animals, the noises they make, the places they go, and all that sort of stuff. So that's really my passion.
Absolutely. Very cool. You mentioned something that I wanted to kind of touch on here because a lot of people aren't familiar. You said you look at audio, and I understand what that means, but can you kind of explain what you mean by looking at audio?
Yeah, so I will say your average investigator, they'll put a recorder out or a recording device, and they'll bring it back, and they'll spend hours listening to it or going through it. I used to be that guy. And then eventually David Ellis of the Olympic Project said, hey, if you really want to vet audio, your ears can play tricks on you, but you need to visually look at it. And so he got me involved with different programs. There's different programs out there right now. I use Audacity, and it's basically a program where you can visually see, it's a spectrogram, where you can visually see the signatures and the different peaks and the different, I can't think of the word I'm looking for now. The different peaks, the different signatures. And you can go through audio a lot quicker and faster, especially if you're recording like we've been doing a recording project led by Chris Spencer, recording every night for over a year. And if you were to sit there and try and listen to that, it'd be crazy. If you're recording from 5 o'clock at night till 9 o'clock in the morning, you would never be able to do it. But visually looking at it, throwing something on Audacity or on a spectrograph, you can look at it and look for unique signatures or just sounds and vocals and percussives. And so that's the best and the fastest way to do it. And if you do it long enough, things will start sticking out. You can go through a file, a 30 minutes or an hour-long file or 10-hour-long file in no time. And I'm by no means an expert at it. Chris Spencer and David Ellis are far better, but I have, over the years, it's been an absolute godsend because it's saved me a lot of time and found some stuff visually that you do not hear, but you can see it visually. And so that to me it's the direction that if you're a serious investigator in any field, whether it's paranormal or cryptids, visually looking at this stuff is where people should be going. and it's not that hard to do. It takes some practice, takes some know-how, and everybody has their own little adjustments in these, different color palettes and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about, obviously.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I tell you, I'm a big fan of Cliff Barrickman's podcast, and I remember a while ago, I think he had David Ellis on there, and he mentioned, I can't remember the name of the software that I use. It's in my background here somewhere, but I opened that up, and I have long audio and stuff from overnights and places we've gone and stuff, and it's like, when have I got time to look at or listen to this, And as soon as I found that program, I'm like, there it is. You can hear everything. It's for people that like have the old Windows media player that shows like the spikes and stuff of music, this goes way beyond that to show you, like, you can see what a bird sound looks like, or frogs, and you can tell, okay, this is all just background. Oh, there's something different, and it sticks out like a sore thumb in there. You can really see it.
Oh yeah, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You mentioned frogs. I mean, they have their own unique signature. Birds, different types of birds. Like the pileated woodpecker has its own type of signature. Coyotes, elk, deer, cougar, bobcat, they all have their own unique signatures. They may vary a little bit, but when you get something that sticks out, that's odd, like a really long vocal, you could see that signature and go, well, that doesn't look like a coyote. It does. Could it be human? And then you look at the hertz level and you're like, no, that's outside of that. So it's detrimental to what we do nowadays, especially having done this year-long. We've been out for 2 years now, but recording every single night in one specific area, getting to know every animal in that area, what they're doing at all hours. And to do that just by listening would be a nightmare.
Absolutely. And what you said there with the hertz and stuff too, you can tell certain animals are only in certain hertz, so you can see. If you're looking for a certain kind of creature, you can narrow down your visual spectrum of that audio piece to that level and only look at what you're looking for, and that's a big help too.
Yeah. And like Audacity, for example, it's a really simple free program. You can download it. It's free. And there's multiple things you could do in there. You can clip segments. You can, rotate them, you can loop them, you can do all sorts of stuff on Audacity, looking at this stuff. And if anybody's interested, it's a free program. I used to use it for editing my radio show. So there's lots of uses for Audacity, and it's free.
I've had a question for a while, and I think you might be one of the people I can ask this. When you talk about long duration audio recorders, we have some that last, on a solid battery, they last probably 3 to 5 days out in the field. But you guys are recording for months at a time sometimes, or I know some people are.
Yeah.
What do you guys use for batteries, and how do you use your equipment? Like, I know the audio recorders and stuff, but that still hasn't, I think, I don't remember if it was David Ellis or somebody I was listening to on a podcast talked about the different task cams and stuff like that, and the different recorders, but they never explain how to get the battery to last longer.
Yeah, David uses an Edaroyal. It's a little more expensive portable recorder, and I'm not sure what kind of battery pack he uses. When I'm in the field, I use a Tascam. Yeah, magic batteries. I use a Tascam DR05 or DR07 with an external battery pack that, like you said, will last 3 to 5 days. If I'm going camping, that's perfect. But what we've gone into via Chris Spencer is a unit called the SM4. It's a bioacoustical professional unit. It costs about $800 or more. And it runs off of D batteries and two SD cards. And it's a very expensive unit, but that's what your professional biologists use to record bats or birds or whatever have you. And so it's about the size of a game camera. It's got 2 external mics. But it'll last months, and the sound quality is amazing. When you listening to or looking at visually what a DR05 Tascam sounds like, records, and then you listen to the SM4, it's night and day. You almost don't even want to go back to the Tascam at all, because we like to, with audio in general, especially the SM4, it's the most non-intrusive thing you could do out there. You just place, it's kind of like a game camera, but it doesn't give off any IR. It's just sitting there. It's green. You can conceal it. and it'll stay there for months. You don't have to go back for a couple months and a month or two, and then you can collect it. So you're not making a present. You're not. You're just letting it do its job, and then you pick it up. Whereas like your more portable units, like your Tascams and Sonys and all these little smaller units, well, you got to collect them and go through them. But yeah, so you get what you pay for is what I get. I guess what I'm saying.
Very cool. When you're talking about those, I've looked at that one. I believe too. Excuse me. Does that work like a trail cam? Does it only record audio like when triggered, or does it record solid?
I'm not sure if it could be like a triggered one. I'm not sure, but what we do is we set it for specific time, and it'll start and stop.
Yep. Okay.
So and it'll do that. So right now, I think we have 3 of these. 2 of them are out in the field right now, and they stop. I think we start around 5 in the evening and stops around 9 in the morning, and then we can set the other one to do the daytime stuff. So yeah, that's it. I think it could be set either way. I'm not sure if it could be sound comes by and it triggers or not. We have it just set for a period of time. It can record 24/7, but we like to get longevity out of it. A couple months. So we just have it recording at night, and that seems to be when we get the most activity or suspect stuff in these areas periodically.
Very cool. Yeah, I know there's some audio recorders that are like voice activated. So once you start, it's always like pre-recording and cycling, and then as soon as you start talking, it'll record and then stop. So I know some people have used those in the field as well, but I wasn't sure with looking at the longer duration stuff if you were just recording solid like we had talked about with that, or if it was only picking up when it heard sounds and stuff. So
yeah, we like to not miss anything. So we have it running the whole time. And, you still have to go and vet the audio, but it's like a game camera. It won't take a photo or a video unless it's triggered. That's why I like plot watchers. They take photos every so many. How you set it, like a plot watcher camera, it'll take photos. Boom, 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 boom. So it doesn't need to be triggered. And that's with the recorders. I think that's just the best way to go. It's just to run it nonstop, so you don't miss anything. And in a lot of cases, we've gotten vocals with a percussive, and you hear the individual or individuals moving through the bushes. I mean, so we have a whole little cool clip of vocal, percussive, and something moving. If it was just triggered by sound, you'd miss a lot of that.
Absolutely. I like what you said too about your cameras being just taking pictures, the plot watcher stuff. We switched all of our long duration trail cameras that we use up in Upper Michigan to time lapse. So for people listening and stuff, I'm sure you're familiar. Like if you take a triggered picture, you have to have something that triggers the camera. But if you're taking just a time lapse photo, this thing can be 500 feet away, well out of trigger range, and it's still going to capture it. And you have a better chance of randomly catching something when you're just taking these pictures than trying to get something triggered. And we actually got one picture doing it that way. So
the time lapse, I think, like you're describing, is the way to go. Absolutely. Where you're not waiting for something to trigger. It's just taking photos or video, depending how you have it set up. That is definitely the way to go. And that's kind of the direction we're going. We do have a few. We're trying different cameras, different battery units that power those cameras for longevity, for longer periods of time, not a couple of days, not a week, months on end. Fortunately, they're all expensive, and it takes know-how, because up here, we get a lot of moisture. And so you have to figure out how to cover those units, but you don't want them being so obvious out there, like they stick out like a sore thumb. So one other point I was going to make, since we're on the topic of cameras, if you look at the Patterson-Gimlin film, which I believe is a real Sasquatch, in my opinion, I know Bob really well, and Isaac Tina of the Olympia Project has done some work on that film. You watch it on The Proof Is Out There with Dr. Meldrum and Bill Munns. When Patty was captured on camera, she was near a creek bed, and it was, a flowing creek bed. And if you look at a lot of the reports, some I've taken in over the years, a lot that I've just read about, where you have a Sasquatch and a human near a river or a creek bed, and one of those parties, whether it's the Sasquatch or the human, are surprised by the other person being there. Why is that? Probably because there's noise, there's distraction, and there's smells coming down that river. I mean, there's just different smells, noise, and the water itself is distracting. I think Patty was distracted. I think a lot of these reports, whether it's just a human fishing and then there's a Sasquatch, or the Sasquatch is in the water and then the human pops in, and neither party knew they were there. So getting back to cameras, I think the best opportunity for somebody to get something on a camera is near a creek or a river, which a lot of people do that anyways. But if you can conceal them well enough and leave them there for a period of time, because it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for these things to really lose their scent, and it's never perfect, but leave it in those areas, and don't even look for necessarily really good crossing. You can look for crossing points, but I think Sasquatch a lot of times is using the roughest terrain, the nastiest bushes, because if I could, I'd put a game camera in the middle of the bushes, but it's just going to get a bunch of, bushes blowing back and forth. I think that's where the Sasquatch are really moving half the time, to stay concealed, to avoid leaving impressions on the ground. But they all everything has to go towards water. And in the areas we work in, at some point they have to cross there. All the animals do. So I think your best opportunity, at least our best opportunity in my mind, is placing cameras near rivers and creeks to maybe catch a Sasquatch off guard as it's doing its business, being distracted, or, and it can't smell that camera. It can't necessarily see it. So just throwing that out there.
That's a really good thought. I like that. I hadn't thought of that before, but you're absolutely right. I mean, even if they can hear the trail cameras, like a lot of people believe, you're masking that by the sound of the rushing water and stuff. And
Exactly.
that's awesome. And then the smell, like you said, and everything. Yeah. Lee has a question here. How often do you set your time-lapse cameras? Mine go every 3 seconds, or I'm sorry, 3 pictures every 3 to 5 minutes is what my 2 do. So what are yours set for, Shane?
Very similar. We got one that'll do, a photo every 5 seconds. That's a little monotonous. So it's every couple of minutes, 3 photos every minute or every couple of minutes. That's basically what we have our set for. And it covers a broad area. So you can get something moving, over a span of that minute to, so that's, it's one of those things, it's trial and error, and how long do you want that camera to run for? Because if you set it for more photos, then the battery's going to drain twice as fast. And that's why we kind of set it for, like you said, 3 photos, maybe every 5 minutes or every couple of minutes, something like that. Saves the battery power.
And not running it at night saves battery, because the battery is mainly used for the flash of either the infrared or the white light. So that also causes a big drain. And then the follow-up to that is, if they see an infrared, the time-lapse doesn't need infrared. It would if it's shooting at night, right?
Yeah, and a lot of those cameras don't work at night. A lot of them don't. So you have to, sometimes you have to, what direction am I going in? And with IR, I don't know if Sasquatch could see IR. It's an absolute possibility. There are animals that can see infrared. Could Sasquatch? Quite possibly. So it's just one of those things where I think people get really frustrated with game cameras. Why don't we have more photos? Why don't we don't have this, don't have that? Well, I think because people are arrogant. There's a lot of game cameras out there, but the vast majority of them are placed by hunters and that nature. So they're looking for specific game along a specific game trail, because they know their core. They know where the deer go. They know where the bear go. I'm a hunter. I know where to place my cameras to capture deer or bear or cougar. But I'd be very arrogant to say, I'm going to put that camera over there and I should get a Sasquatch on there. I should. I think that's arrogant. And I think that's the problem. Yeah, there's a lot of game cameras out there, but I cannot 100% tell you how Sasquatch or where they move. I have my ideas, my opinions. But if they're moving through the thick stuff, the thick huckleberry that's 9 feet tall and you can't see a couple of feet in front of you, who's in their right mind is going to put a camera in there and you're looking for a moving needle in a haystack. So that's where we get back to the time lapse thing. I think that's your best opportunity. And if Sasquatch can see in the IR, see IR, well, they're not perfect. They'll make a mistake at some point.
Absolutely. We have to pause for a quick station identification here and break. And we're talking with Shane Corson from the Olympic Project up in Upper Washington area. If you have any questions about that or anything for Shane, feel free to put them in the comments section, and we will get to them after we come back.
download the new station calendar and never miss another show. To get it is simple and free. Just visit WLTK-DB.com to download or tap the subscribe button on our mobile app. Once the file is in your downloads folder, just double-click it, authorize it to your calendar, and boom, you have every show listed. Not only does it list the shows, but also the links to watch them live. We would like to thank Danny Loosemore for developing this for us and hope you enjoy it as much as we do. Get yours now at WLTKDB.com or just click subscribe on our mobile app. See you at the shows. Put the power of this station in the palm of your hand and download our mobile app. Visit the App Store, Google Play, and search for WLTK-DB Talk Radio and download the app for free. Listen to past shows, download our station calendar right to yours, and even shop the WLTK-DB Talk Radio mobile app, now available on the App Store and Google Play. Download yours now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're talking with Shane Corson of the Olympic Project. Shane, thanks for being on the show today again. So let's talk a little bit more about the Olympic Project. I know, like, your guys' big claim to fame, at least for like most people, is the nests, correct?
Yeah, I mean, before I came along, I guess you could say the Olympic Project was known, especially with Derek Randall's, was the Skookum Cast, which was a big deal, and I still is a big deal to me, anyways, and a number of other things. But yes, since 2015, we've been heavily involved with this nest study area, and it's one of our main core areas. Where in one of the areas we're recording this audio that we were talking about for over a year, and trying new camera experiments and some other experiments that are still kind of under the radar right now. We're testing a few things, but yeah, the nest pretty profound, and it's one of the main reasons I moved up to Washington State, because I was so enthralled by these nests that were discovered by a timber surveyor up here in Washington.
Very cool. All right, we're gonna come back to the nest in just a second. I'm curious. I've been wanting to have somebody from the Olympic Project on for quite a while here, so this is great that I get to talk to you about this, because we're looking for this kind of stuff up in our area and trying to find that. So the more information I can get out of this, the best for me. I mean, when we're talking about these things, and I by no means do I need a pinpoint on a map, but when you're out there, how far is this? Well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about like the nests and why they're important and look like? Because I think people that aren't familiar might need to know. But how close is that to, like, say, a road? Or is this like way in the middle of the woods? Or is it, a couple, quick jog out of your car or something?
Yeah, no, it's way out in the woods. 2.5 miles behind a locked timber gate. An area that hasn't been logged in over 50 years, with deep ravines, salmon-bearing creek, seasonal salmon-bearing creek, which I think is important up in this area, and way off trail through the nastiest stuff. You're falling over, you're tripping. The canopy up above, you can't fly a drone in this area. You can't penetrate these Douglas firs. I mean, they're big giant pines. And then you have the salal, which is the kind of evergreen bush as a base. Then you have the huckleberry, the evergreen huckleberry in this area. It's very thick. And like I said, way off trail. The timber surveyor that came across them was doing his job. He was marking an area that was going to be timbered or cut and logged. And he came across them. And what he came across originally was about 4 nests, or 3 to 4 nests, oval in shape, anywhere from about 4 feet across to 8.5, 9 feet across, over a foot in depth, made out of nothing but evergreen huckleberry. With, they're massive, and they're all made at the same time. You could see, because bears typically will scrape a tree and lay down on it, the bark and whatnot, or they'll grab some boughs and bring them in. There were hundreds and hundreds of huckleberry boughs made to, or brought over to construct these nests of various sizes. And when this timber surveyor, 27 years in the business, doing exactly what he's been doing, came across this, his mind was blown. He got a little weirded out because he'd never seen anything like that. And they looked fairly fresh. The evergreen still had its, the huckleberry, the nest still had the green leaves on it. And he found them in the month of May. And we surmised that they were actually made in the month of either the very end of February or the month of March. This huckleberry will take months for it to brown up and dry up, especially in this wet environment. We live in a rainforest. So they're massive. To date, we found 24. 23 of those were all made roughly about the same time within those few weeks. We think that they were made spread out. You would have 7 on one area. And I'll tell you too, these nests are off a ridge line, and they're basically have these fingers or plateaus that come off these ridge lines. You'll have if you look at your knuckles, that'd be the ridge line, and you have these different fingers with ravines in between, 100 yards apart. And these nests were always found at the tips of these fingers or these plateaus that would dive straight down into a ravine, into a salmon-bearing creek. Whereas certain times of the year, February is one of them, seasonally, depending on the run, you could walk across the salmon. It's like a National Geographic. It's like out of Alaska. That's what it looks like. And so there's all that protein down there as a food source. But they're very strategically placed. The original nest area site with the 7 nests, they were in a triangular formation with the smaller ones in the middle and the larger ones on the outside, with the largest one being at the point, which I call the point, which would lead down into the ravine. The point of the triangle, and it had 2 rocks on top of the ground right next to these nests that had score marks on them. The only rocks in this whole area that had score marks or were above ground. And when we picked them up, something had struck those rocks together. And, a lot of researchers, investigators, and whatnot surmise that Sasquatch uses that to communicate or, make noise. And there's so much to these nests that, like I said, that are truly amazing. And in after about 6 months of finding those 23 nests, we decided to keep looking for more different ravines in that general area. And for 5-6 years, we didn't find any newer ones. We maybe found some older ones that were much older, but nature takes over real quick, and so we couldn't be sure. With tree fall and wind and snow and rain and animals moving in and out of these areas, these nests will get destroyed after a while. As we believe that if they are Sasquatch related, they're probably used for a little spell of time and they move on. Well, the end of February 2020, my partner Todd Hill and I were out in a different area and came across something making one of these nests. We never got eyes on it, but we did hear it come at us, and it moved away, and it circled up behind us, and then it took off. But when we went to where we had heard this thing, here was a humongous pile of huckleberry boughs that was something was making a nest right there. That very day, the huckleberry boughs were still glistening, still, very shiny from being snapped off, anywhere from a foot off the ground to 9 feet off the ground. And we eventually found 4 or 5 14-inch impressions, and which is very congruent with other impressions we found in the area. We found 2 hand impressions, which I actually invited Cliff Berkman up to help me cast it because it was very precarious, and I wanted to make sure it was done right. And we collected hair, and it was a mirror image of the area we found the original nest. We're talking about maybe 3,000 feet away, not incredibly far away, but a different ravine on a western facing slope, which is important, on a finger coming off a ridge. And once again, lots of huckleberry, very impenetrable. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we look for, is something off trail. We start looking for huckleberry breaks, like a lot of them in one little area. And that's how we've come across these nests in the past. But we don't believe they're made every year. We believe they're made periodically for possibly a birthing purpose in this area. Once again, just, spitballing, hypothesizing based on the size of the nests, and also based on 2 of the nests we discovered in 2 different areas, 2 different fingers. There was a bush nest. So you have these ground nests, these large ground nests. Well, you had 2 nests that were constructed in the huckleberry. It wouldn't support any weight, but it was a mirror image of what was on the ground. And that was really fascinating because it was a couple feet off the ground. And Derek Randles did a lot of study on this and realized that gorillas that's how they teach their young ones to make nests, is in bushes like that. And it's kind of a, mirror image of what's on the ground. So we don't have like a silverback running around up here, but there's a lot of similar behavior between primates. And of course, there's a lot of similar behavior between, us and them. So it's like, where are you with this?
Wow. That's a lot of information there. So
yeah, sorry, I had to throw it out
no, there. No, that was great. You said one thing I noticed is you said that the westward facing is really important. Why do you say that?
The most sun. You get the most sun, especially. Yeah. See, these nests they're made on the ground, but they're very mattressy, and it's very thick. The amount of huckleberry placed in there with huge indentations in the middle where something big has been laying in them, but keeps you off the ground. And that western facing slopes, you get the most sun, and you get a little drier. You keep everything just a little bit drier, because this area is a little bit of a microclimate, which is another important aspect to this in this area. Now, when it comes to my goal is to have other people find nests. I'm hoping we can replicate this somewhere completely different. A lot of people don't know that in 1967, a timber cruiser, a timber guy that worked for the timber company down there in California, Bluff Creek, he found a nest, 1967, a nest in Scorpion Creek, which feeds into Bluff Creek, and it's a stone's throw away from Patty, who was a female. And so, was that her nest? Was she, did she give birth? Was she about to give birth? It's very interesting to me that there was a nest found that same year. So, and I'll mention too, the impressions, these 14-inch impressions that we found out in these nest areas are interesting to me because Patty was about 14 inches. So.
Interesting. Well, that brings up a lot of interesting questions and thoughts there. Like, so if these are nests for reproduction or something, as you kind of think there, why do you think that there's like 7 of them? You said in the initial one that you found, right? So are there 7 females in that group, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's one of the toughest questions. These nests were all made roughly about the same time. I mean, the ones on that original finger were all made at the same time. The other ones on some of the other fingers, was it a family group moving from finger to finger? You stay in one area too long and you leave a large impression and you get discovered. But if you're nomadic and move and move and move, I tend to believe it was maybe some sort of family possibly unit, if it is Sasquatch related, which we found hair in the nest that are primate hair. They're like medulla, they're match other possible Sasquatch hair. And so there's a lot to this. It's not just one thing, but I don't know if it's a group of females and some juveniles, because some of these nests were rather much smaller. 3-4 feet across. And then you have these really large 8-9 feet tall, length nests. Is it a family unit? Is it a group of females with little ones? Is there multiple males? I have no idea. I really don't. But it was definitely more than one. If this is Sasquatch, it was definitely more than one. Definitely more than one. And, maybe if you look at, and I always go back to known primates like orangutans and gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos and whatnot. If you look at the, gorillas, for example, they actually strategically place their nests. They only stay in them for a night. They'll build a nest and they move on. I don't think whatever made these nests, the amount of work it took, it was for more than one night. It could have been a couple of days, could have been a week. I don't know. I wouldn't think it'd be more than a week, but they're strategically placed with the larger nests on the outside, the smaller nests around the inside. Well, gorillas do this. They protect the little ones, and the little ones are always going to be in the center, where the larger nests are going to be in the outskirt with the alpha male at the point. And that's exactly what we're seeing in this nest area. And once again, I don't believe we have gorillas up here. I don't get into arguments about what people think Sasquatch is. We're all primates at the end of the day. So I stick to primate. Yeah.
So, one of the things, I'll go back to this, one of the things that you said about the bush with the nest on top of it, I kind of was thinking like a crib kind of thing, with that would be raised up, less in the elements on the ground and more like, you're not going to escape from here, I can put you there kind of thing. So is there any kind of thought behind that at all?
Originally, because this could be some sort of nursery setup as well, going on with the reproduction or birthing scenario. Like I said, it was a mirror image of what was on the ground, but much smaller, and it would not really hold any weight. I mean,
Okay.
you had a very small Sasquatch, I suppose, but I think if you're giving birth to something, if you look at once again known primates, those they hang on to their mothers. They for like a year or two. I mean, they just hang on, whether it's orangutan or chimpanzee or a gorilla, they hang on. I think a little one would be right there in the nest with the mother, as most primates do. I mean, if it was larger and would support weight, the crib theory, the crib idea would work, but it really wouldn't hold much weight. It was just kind of constructed almost like a large bird nest, but with green huckleberry boughs. And I'll tell you something about the huckleberry too, real quick, is that we're not just talking about quarter inch to in diameter. Some of these are over an inch to 2 inches in diameter that a human could not break, and sometimes they were broken off, twisted, snapped off. No teeth marks and no claw marks, which is atypical of bear. And I see bear beds quite frequently in some of these other areas. And the other problem I have with the crib idea, or why I lean towards it not being a crib, is that there are predators in this area. We have eagles, we have bear, we have bobcat, we have cougar. Now, they probably would steer away from Sasquatch, but they're opportunistic and they're predators. So, yeah, I just don't see them. We're talking a couple of feet away from these nests, but still.
Okay, so your original site, you had, we were talking about the nest there. So with having that many individuals, like as you speculate with the 7 nests and the adult and that, do you find that in the other evidence that you're getting, whereas like you're hearing vocals that would, because obviously you're still getting evidence in this area, correct?
Yeah, especially the audio. Yeah.
So are you still finding footprints or enough corresponding evidence to show that there would be, we'll say, 7 of these creatures in that area still?
Yeah, I mean, our running idea is that there's probably, there's a lot of ideas here. Where to start? So there was a months prior, or after I moved up to Washington, I was staying on a piece of property. It was about 10 miles from this area, and there was, over the span of 2 months before I got there, there was 2 different loggers at a logging gate, and didn't know each other. And over a month, both of them saw a group of 4, a male, female, and 2 little smaller ones. So I actually think there's probably more like 4 to 5 individuals possibly. And we have found different size impressions in this area. The hair we can't differentiate as just being probably most likely from a Sasquatch. The hand impression we found 3 different hand impressions. 2 of them was a left and a right, and the third was half of fingers and a palm. We are finding that there's quite possibly at least 3 to 4 individuals in this area. We don't know. This is where you get into, it's all tricky, right? Because it's all hypothesizing. But I don't think they move together as a family unit all the time. I think there's probably females with the little ones, and the male. If you look at the most sightings, the vast majority of sightings are male sightings, big males or juvenile males, but males. And they're the ones that are going to be checking out the territory, watching where the humans are doing, whereas the females and the little ones are probably further in the woods doing their thing. So I don't think they necessarily move together all the time. But and in this area, I don't think they live in this area all the time. I don't think they migrate. I think they're transitory. So they go from elevation to elevation based on food sources and weather, because we do get snow in this area, and you got to go where the food's at, and you got to go where you're going, the most temperate, areas. I would assume. So we get a lot of audio in this area, but we don't always get audio in this. I mean, from what we would call suspect or possibly coming from Sasquatch, it's it's hit or miss a lot of times, but it'll peak for a little bit and then it'll dissipate. And so we have been collecting a bunch of different data, trying to figure out when they're possibly coming through this area, why they're in this area, what direction are they coming from. We're trying to, and are they going to make more nests? There's got to be more nests made at some point, I would assume, again. And that's kind of why we kind of stay out of the area for lengthy periods of time. If they're in there, I want to come across more nests with more impressions and more hair, though I would like to get one on camera building a nest at some point. When we came across that nest in 2020, when we disrupted that thing making its nest, it never came back. And I actually felt a little bit guilty about that. All the work that went into trying to construct this nest, and we disrupted it and never came back. And I thought, well, I know these things exist. That's not a question for me. But do I really want to stop it from doing its natural thing? Not really. I'll come in later and sweep up, the evidence and collect it. And, it's a catch-22. You want to get one on camera, but I don't want to disturb their behavior.
Absolutely. Well, so for people interested in like what these things look like, I've been looking at your website and stuff. I haven't found any pictures on there. Are there pictures on your website, or for people, have you watched Expedition Bigfoot?
I have. Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you're familiar. They found those up in I think it was Washington, right? The two nests that they found, are those similar to what you got, or how do those look compared, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's opening quite a can of worms there that I don't think I want to go down to.
Okay.
It's a lot I could say about that. I'll say they look absolutely nothing like what we discovered. Okay. There is no, I call them nests. Now they are built, but I don't like to call them necessarily a structure. They don't have nothing over the top. They're gigantic ground nests, like you would see a gorilla. That's the closest thing. If you look up a gorilla nest, that's about the closest thing you're going to find. They don't look anything like that. And I'm not saying that Sasquatch doesn't make different structures and different nests. I'm just saying when I'm looking for a nest, this is what I am looking for based on what we've been led to discover and what we've discovered. And so, that's that. Yeah.
Very well. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
So let's go on to this real quick here. We're almost out of time. If you guys have any other questions, please give them in the comments before we're done here today. With that being said, have you, I think on your website, talked about eDNA. So have you done any work with the nest sites? Well, I know you have, but have you done any work with the nest sites, and what have you got with that for eDNA?
Yeah, and I didn't answer your last question probably. We don't have any nest pictures on our website yet. Okay. The original pictures we took really didn't do it justice. Trying to think. I've done a couple symposiums. That's usually where I shared the vast majority of our evidence. And I even reconstructed the nest and took one to a symposium here in conference here in Washington, so people could really get an eye and check it out. And now it's displayed down in Cliff Berkman's museum down in Boring, Oregon, which if you actually go to his museum site, you'll get an idea what these nests look like. I think he's got a picture on the North American Bigfoot Museum. So I'm sorry, what was your last question there, Barnaby?
eDNA.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we had Dr. Meldrum come out a number of years ago and collected soil. So eDNA is environmental DNA, where they test the soil for organisms. And we sent it off to a certain individual. This is trial and error. I've found with eDNA, it's very frustrating. The hair speaks for itself. Visually, it's primate hair. The soil, found a lot of known animals in that soil, including human, which, when you get samples back, it always seems to come back human. What percentage human? That's we got to do more than just mitochondrial stuff on this. It's got to get down to the nuclear to figure out who the father is and the mother. The mitochondrial side will probably always say human. And I think if Sasquatch is anything like a known primate, like a chimpanzee, what is like 99.8% human, that was the problem we ran into with the eDNA, is that it came back human, but it wasn't done enough to say what percentage. Is it 99.9% human? What percentage human? So the eDNA was very, very frustrating to me because it's also very, very expensive. We have more samples down the road. I think the best opportunity for us to get, you need multiple samples. That's a whole nother issue. Multiple samples with the same results over and over again. We're looking at testing water from here on out rather than soil. You can find a creek near these areas that, you're going to get a lot of the known animals, but you're looking for that anomaly. But if you look at some of the studies done over the years that I've been involved in some of them, the Olympia project definitely has, where you got these samples and they come back human, and then everybody's, it's contaminated or this, or that. And, I think that's when the real job starts. Well, what percentage human? Tell me what percentage human, and then we'll talk. Is it 100% human? or is it 99.8%, 99.9, whatever. So down the road here, if it's if we have the funds, and we basically pay for everything out of our own pocket. We don't get any money from anybody outside sources. If convenient fund wise, if we have the right academics involved, because from here on out, when we came across this nest in 2020, we didn't want to touch anything. I was going to bring in outside, not even non-Bigfoot related scientists. I didn't want anybody that was tainted with Sasquatch. I wanted professionals in there and collect and document, and then tell me what they see and what they came across. Well, COVID hit and it was all a mess. And so we ended up collecting the stuff ourselves. I don't want to do that down the road. I don't mind casting impressions, all that, but we need outside resources. And that's what this community lacks, real outside resources. It's getting better. Working with, you ever get a chance to get Amy Boo on your show to talk about Project Zoo Book? I'm a part of Project Zoo Book, and it's a bunch of academics talking to researchers and hypothesizing and sharing and collaborating and bringing their science knowledge to the table. Some of them are in what I call the Sasquatch closet, but because of their careers, they're academics, but there is a movement there. And hopefully down the road here, it won't be so taboo to talk about, and we can get more eDNA, more DNA studies done that'll come down in price, and more individuals outside of the Bigfoot community stepping up to look at these samples.
I don't know if you can talk about this as well, but have you been approached, or are you working with anything with Doug Hychek on his new project?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I tentatively will be involved with his new production coming out, Sasquatch, was it Legend Meet Sasquatch 2, the second one. And so I know Doug's heavily working on that. He's building a good team. He's got magnificent ideas. And the Olympia project will be a part of that production. And that's all I can really say at the moment.
Awesome.
But yeah, I can't wait.
I actually have him coming on in a couple weeks. I'm not sure the exact date, but he's coming on to talk about that on the show as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah,
very, very, very smart man. He'll be a great guest.
Yeah, very, very nice. I've met him a couple times now, and yeah, very awesome.
Yeah,
so
out there in Minnesota. Yeah.
Yep, right in my neck of the woods. Awesome. I think that's about it. I was going to ask you, so you talked about finding the one where it was being built at the time. I know Cliff had said that you found a new nesting site. Is that the one you're talking about, or is it another complete area?
No, that is the one. There was only one nest being constructed at that time, but and it was being constructed. It was more like the huckleberry was being collected from all around that area. Right. And yeah, that is the site there. And what was fascinating was Cliff and I were taking apart this nest looking for hair, and we lifted up part of it, and there was impressions, 14-inch impressions right underneath the nest. You wouldn't have seen that unless you lifted up the pile, which was mind-blowing to me. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I'm a big fan of his show. I listen to it every week and stuff because it's, you can only listen to so many Sasquatch chronicles of people telling their stories and stuff. I want to get into the meat of it. And I love his show because he cuts all the crap out and just goes with that. So
yeah. And I've been on there twice. If anybody wants to go back and listen to those episodes, I do get really into depth on the nest, like really into depth. So you could always go back and listen to those. And I love his show too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome guy. So is there anything you guys got? Well, that was the other thing I was going to ask you. You have public expeditions up there. Can you tell a little bit about that briefly, and if there's any of that coming up, and then any other events that you got coming up that you're going to be speaking at, or stuff that you got coming up?
Yeah, so we haven't done an expedition in a number of years because we've been so focused on the nest and working in this area and really hitting the ground, boots on the ground. But we possibly, maybe August of this year, we may put one together. We just kind of steered away from that. Years past, we've had wonderful trips out, expeditions. We always bring in guests like Cliff or Dr. Meldrum or Thomas Steenberg. We brought in a lot of great guests, and we teach clinics on how to cast, what to look for. We teach backpack preparedness, which is a huge thing for us. If you're not prepared to go out in the woods, and you shouldn't be doing anything, that's how people go missing. You got to be ready for all the elements. You have to have a backup plan. You have to just as we teach a very, very well packed together expedition. And we really want to showcase not just what you should be looking for, but how you should be looking for it. And, it's fun. So I kind of miss doing them. I'm hoping maybe we'll do one this year. If not, we'll definitely get something scheduled for next year. As far as speaking engagements or things, I just got done doing one in Kelso, Washington, a really big one with Dr. Meldrum and Cliff and the gang. And but I will be doing most likely the Sasquatch Summit coming up in Orton Shores, Washington in November. I got an opportunity to maybe do one or two more here in Washington and Oregon, but I love doing these things, but it takes away from my field time. And I don't like to keep talking about the same thing over and over again. So I like to bring new stuff to the table or updates. And the only way you're going to get those updates is if you're in the field, So trying to do less speaking engagements here and spend more time in the woods. But we do have different members, like David Ellis is going to be speaking up in Forks, Washington here in a couple of months. I think it's May, Sasquatch Days, and there's quite a few events out here with a lot of good speakers. Not even just Olympia Project members, but there's a lot of good individual researchers out this way. As you guys got a lot of great out your way as well, and people, I'm always encouraging them to go give it a listen, see what people have to say, what they have to show, and I always like meeting people at these events. They always bring something to the table, a picture, a story, a encounter, or advice, and so yeah. That's what we got going on. Basically, we're just gonna be in the woods. February here, we're in the months right now. March is when, if nests are being made, this is when we think they're being made. And so I'm gonna be gone here for weeks on end, just doing nothing but in the woods, exploring with a little core group of individuals, and that's what we're gonna be up to.
Sounds great, man. Awesome. Keep up the good work. That's awesome. Is there any? I know on your website it says that. What is your website? And I know that you're looking for like reports from that area, not like you said ambulance chase and stuff, but where can people reach out to you if they have information that's relevant to you guys?
Yeah, olympicproject.com. It's kind of a work in progress. We're still updating the website. You can go in there and kind of get the gist of what we're about, some of the things we've come across, and the individuals involved. You can share a report there, and especially if it's in the Olympics, or at least on the west side of Washington. That would be of interest to us, definitely. Any stories you have, any interesting possible nests you've discovered. People do find nests, mainly timber people involved in timber companies, but people do find nests. They have been found in Alaska, California, Washington, Oregon, Montana, that I'm aware of, Oregon, Idaho. So they do find them rarely, and they're almost always found by somebody in a timber company because they're way off trail, and you wouldn't really want to go out there unless you had a job to do, and they do. So you could also find me on Monster X Radio. That's my podcast. I do show about once a month, maybe once every couple of weeks. Julie Wrench does a show called On the Shoulder with Giants with Thomas Steenberg on Monster X Radio. And you could always reach out to me there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You could reach out to the Olympia Project on both of those sites as well. So we're kind of a little bit everywhere. I'm also on Twitter, though I don't get on there as much.
Very cool. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Can't wait to meet you in person, like I said, and hopefully get a chance to see some of your stuff. So
yeah, Barnaby. Hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Had a great time, and thanks for having me on again, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for all the information. All right, guys, that is our show for this week. I want to tell you all what we got coming up next week. Next week, I have Tobias Wayland from the Singular Fortean Society here in Wisconsin, and he's going to be talking a lot about the Mothman from around the Lake Michigan Mothman sightings in the Chicago area, and updating you guys all on some of that and his thoughts and the recent sightings and stuff of the Mothman. So that'll be next week here on Monday Morning Monsters. So until then, guys, we'll see you out there.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Bye.